Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Makia Video Productions, and Frank Melly Productions, with additional support from Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture. So here we have some wheatgrass trays that weren't quite good enough at the juice bar because they had a slow week and things didn't sell the way they expected. So rather than having them reduce their order and us reduce production or cancel their order or give them a refund, we've brought new trays in and we bring these old ones back and we're going to recycle them as chicken food. Now this arrangement is only possible because we have that special personal relationship with the business owner, one business owner to another in a local environment, where we've arranged for a standing order where they commit to buy from us a certain number of wheat trays every week, and we've committed to make sure that they don't have losses by recycling them in this way and turning them into chicken food. And it's a lot better than us charging them and having them throw them in the dumpster. Here we are in the Charlottesville Holiday Market, mid-December. There's light snowfall. We've got craft vendors, we've got food vendors. We've even had a seafood vendor with fresh local seafood. So let's talk to Stephanie Malloy, the city market manager, and find out more about this holiday market and how the city market went this year. How has the city market been performing in the recent year compared to the last years? And how many years has the market been going on?
The city market started in 1973, and it's been increasing by leaps and bounds. Especially, I only have experience since 2003, but sales we reached over almost 1.1 million this year, just for the city market. We also have Farmers in the Park that was started last year. And that is a Wednesday afternoon market from 3 to 7 at Mead Park. And that actually did really well this year too. It did better than its pilot year. And so we were pretty excited about that.
So the past year, it was the record-breaking year of all the years the market's been going on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. This year we broke 1 million, and I think the most ever sales was 2002, I want to say, and that was like 413,000.
Wow! So this year's more than double the previous record. And did you work with the Piedmont Environmental Council on the Buy Fresh, Buy Local campaign?
I have, and I continue to work with Piedmont Environmental on lots of different things. So we're working on a conference for food processors now, and I work with the extension
Well, tell me about
office.
the food processors. We just did the whole kitchen inspection thing with
VDAX.
VDAX and Alan
Ollinger.
Yeah, and he's actually lives right out near me, and we went through all kinds of things, and he came through and said, "Oh yeah, it's all beautiful." So,
yeah. After you filled out piles and piles of paper.
Yeah. One of the things we're trying to do also with VDAX and Todd Haymore, the Commissioner of Agriculture, is to get them on camera talking to us and telling us about what's happening so that people can see that they're really trying to help the growers. It kind of comes across when Alan comes there and says, you can't sell that, or your scales are condemned, or when those inspections happen, they get kind of a bad side, and then everybody wants to fight them.
Yeah.
And there really is, their charter really comes from, let's help the people not make mistakes, so they don't have errors, and then we'll stand behind them. So if they come and inspect your kitchen and then somebody says they got sick from your food, they're on your side saying, we checked they did what they needed to do. So they're really trying to help you with some of that liability. So we're trying to get a good story to show that they're not, because Alan said, I hate coming inspecting the markets because everybody thinks I'm this bad guy shutting them down, and all we're really trying to do is just get these, and the requirements aren't that difficult.
No, they're not.
And if you and they really are best management practices, which every farmer wants to do anyway for saving money. So. If you could tell me a little bit about, because I know you get caught in the middle of that sometimes, where vendors are like, why are they doing this? And we have a segment with Christine talking about the law that they got through and the not for resale labels.
Right,
and
which
so
I
tell
found
us how that
very
works.
confusing this year. I mean, I understand. I thought I understood the thing that they got passed, and I ended up that I didn't really. So.
What was the confusion?
Well, we found out when Alan came to the market, this sticker only applies to certain things, and like baked goods, non-hazardous foods.
Right.
Not hot pepper jelly.
Right.
Not things with eggs in it. So, which is kind of confusing because cake has eggs in it.
Right. But it's not a hazardous food.
That's right.
But a custard is.
Right.
Ice cream's hazardous, but not cake.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just kind of confusing.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I'm working with PEC and the Extension Office to try to create a conference. It's still in we're just planning it now, and we're more or less trying to, get a meeting time that everyone can come.
So is this a conference to get the vendors and the officials together just to talk about what it is?
Yeah.
Now they also have a
It's
school.
to make it easier.
It's a processing school, and there are a couple of different processing schools, and one of them was acidified foods for those hazardous things.
Right.
And if you take that course and get certified, then you can approve recipes. And if you're not certified, then you have to send it to a lab to be approved.
Right. Virginia Tech, I think. Is it Virginia Tech?
Well, Virginia Tech or a private lab. And we sent things this summer and still haven't heard back.
Really?
And Alan says when he tries to call, he gets, I'll get back to you in 5 months. So, we're still having issues.
And that's not very helpful
so that's
for
not gonna
someone
work.
that's trying to start a business.
So if it takes you a year to
we need to
get
figure out
approval.
something better.
And so far they haven't listed a new course, a new acidified foods course.
Right now we're trying to figure out what would be beneficial for someone who's trying to start a business, someone who's trying to make hot pepper jelly, what they need to do. Because as you know, it seems very intimidating.
Right.
I mean, when you get this big stack of papers in the mail and, you got to do this and inspect the kitchens and it's just kind of intimidating. So we want to have a conference where we kind of make it easier so that people understand, okay, this big pile of paper, really, this is what it means. This is what you have to do. And even, we're talking about having panels of retailers, like Rebecca's, or I'm just using, they're not necessarily the people, but, for the people to come to and say, okay, well, this is my idea. What do you think of it? Also, we're considering having like a vendor panel, like people that have done this and have been successful, so that the people can feel like, well, if they did it, we can do it.
And the city's supporting this effort?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Working on the.
So this is something you initiated from the issues that came up at the market?
PEC, Dawn Story, who's a wonderful girl, she actually called me because they were talking about doing this. There is a market manager's listserv that, you get lots of emails some days, and a lot of it's really good information. A lot of it just clicks, that's a good idea. Maybe we should do something like that.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure where the idea came from, but when it was pitched to me, I thought, well, that's a great idea because I feel that it's hard for people to have the certified kitchens and not hard. Hard in the sense that they just don't know what they're getting into, and it's like, well, maybe I don't even want to deal with this. And
so,
everyone that I've
kind of
talked
breaks
to,
down some of that intimidation factor.
Right. Everyone that I've talked to was like, oh, it was nothing. I had one lady that was mad because he didn't inspect her kitchen as well as she thought. She had cleaned all of her equipment with toothpicks.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he's like, oh yeah, this looks good.
Right.
Where, so yeah, we're trying to break down the intimidation factor because it is intimidating. because we have, at the market we have some little old ladies that have been baking cornbread muffins and cookies for 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want anyone in their kitchen, and I understand that, and I respect that, and that's why the Christine Solemn John Coles thing was so wonderful for those little old ladies that are just baking non-hazardous things.
So they put a label on it that's not for retail,
not for resale,
and that's totally fine.
Right.
So what we're talking about in this particular episode is those relationships between the vendors, the regulators, and the customers, and the wholesalers, restaurants, that sort of thing. And what we're trying to find out is, you sometimes get caught in that middle place between the regulators and the vendors, or the customers complaining. But also there's several things that are happening right now. I think PEC, Dawn's Story at PEC has got something going on with a conference about food conference. So if people have some questions or suggestions of how it would be better for suggestions for that conference, they can send some information, request information, or send ideas to Dawn's Story at pec.org. But also there's something going on now where some vendors think the market ought to go to November instead of October, or through November. And I know you had sent out an email about that, didn't get much response, and one of the vendors is kind of taking it on to search a little farther. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, basically, there's a vendor who brought the idea up to me, and of course, I think it's a pretty good idea, as long as we have produce into November. And I guess it really depends on the year, what you have available. Some people have it all year. So we basically are putting some feelers out there to find out who's interested, and we're going to look into seeing if it's possible.
If it's possible.
To use the parking lot into November.
How many vendors are there now? Over 60?
Oh, yeah. We average about 89 vendors a week.
89 every Saturday. And here at the holiday market?
Here at the holiday market, it's probably more like 35.
But that's still a lot of participation when there are places like Waynesboro and Richmond and
Harrisonburg.
And Harrisonburg,
built a brand new one.
Yeah.
The city sees the value in the farmers market, and nothing's going to be done. They're not going to sell the lot unless there's a home for the city market.
Okay.
I mean, they see the value and know that the market is so important to Charlottesville and the residents.
In the terms of those relationships, one of the things that was started, I think this year, was a vendor advisory board.
Yes.
Tell us about how that originated and I haven't really heard a lot about that, so I wonder what happened through this year with that vendor advisory board.
Well, last year I thought that it would be a good idea to have an advisory board, just for help with decisions making, changes to rules and regulations, just conflicts, just to have a board to go to, and not just have to figure it out on my own, or only go to my director. I mean, because of an advisory board, we have 3 farmers, 2 food people, 2 crafters. So I've kind of got a wide a variety of vendors, so they have an understanding of the kind of problems that we have. And I thought that it would be helpful to have them. But we're going to look at, we've been looking at a possible code of conduct for the city market. We've talked about some issues that have come up that I was kind of like, I don't know really what we should do with this. And it's probably something that's really going to need to be resolved before next year. CSA, people bringing CSA deliveries to the market, do they pay? Do they not? I see both sides. I see both sides of that issue, and really don't know what the best solution would be. So that's when I go to the advisory board and say, what do you think?
So this is really kind of the basis of your relationship with the vendors versus you having to relate with 100 individual vendors or 100 vendors sending you an email.
The advisory board was elected by the vendors.
Nominated and elected.
Nominated and elected, yes. So yeah, it was a solution to something that I felt had been a problem.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking this time in the snowy, cold December market. And we look forward to the new warm season.
Yeah, me too.
And we'll cover some more stories, and hopefully we can get every vendor at the market, get a story of every vendor at the market for Meet the Farmer TV.
That'd be great.
So now we've seen the Charlottesville City Market and the Charlottesville Holiday Market here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now let's take a trip down to Virginia State University in Petersburg and talk to a couple of experts in agriculture there about those hidden values and deeper benefits of local Virginia agriculture.
You know, it's really interesting to think about how things that are old are becoming new again in agriculture in some ways. If you think about in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, consumers were buying things locally, but then as technology improved, you had grocery stores, larger grocery stores, you have this vertical integration that occurred, all this high technology in agriculture that occurred to make things better, and now we seem to be kind of moving back. Consumers are wanting to buy things that are locally grown. They're shopping in grocery stores the grocery stores are smaller. They're set up with displays that kind of mimic small local farmers market type situations. So it's interesting to think about how that all these things are coming back around full circle to what they used to be.
So many of the specialty crops that are produced in Virginia are grown on the smaller scale farms. For instance, we could talk about berry production. We do not have farms in the state of Virginia that have 100 acres of blackberries or 600 acres of blueberries, and they do in certain parts of the United States. There's a huge blueberry industry in New Jersey, for instance. But our typical blueberry producer in Virginia is going to have half an acre or 1 acre, maybe 3 or 4 acres of blueberries, and all of those are sold locally. They're not going to be selling them to some big jam or jelly company or syrup company or something like that. So I'm going to say that 98% of our specialty crops are sold within the state of Virginia, locally grown and locally consumed, because these are all direct marketing farmers. They sell to local restaurants, they sell to farmers markets, and they often have people coming to the farm, pick your own operations, or buying from a roadside stand that's right there on the farm. We have some wonderful models that any farmers can follow today concerning intensive horticulture. And I think a number of our landowners in Virginia just don't quite see the profitability that is being earned, particularly in these high value crops, such as all the berries are doing great. Strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. We often see gross income of as much as $30,000, $40,000 an acre if there's good marketing going along with that production of those crops. Specialty Asian vegetables. I've helped so many people get into commercial production of shiitake mushrooms. They're selling for $16 a pound now at farmers markets. Anybody that has a small amount of wooded acres with some small diameter hardwood trees can cut some of them down in a sustainable forest management plan and still produce lots of mushrooms, and they're selling very well. We have people in Virginia who are selling crops such as the mesclun lettuce, these beautiful salad ingredients, and fresh cut herbs, and edible flowers, and baby vegetables, and the Asian vegetables like edamame, these fresh vegetable soybeans. Crops that are different from the big conventional agronomy crops that very often are extremely valuable. One of the ones that amazes me is the amount of value that we see in an acre of fresh cut flowers. And this enterprise is much more practical in the eastern part of Virginia than it would be the western part of Virginia, because the eastern side of Virginia has the urban consumers in concentration enough that there'd be big marketing for cut flowers. But once again, we're looking at $30,000 an acre gross income from a well-managed farm that's growing cut flowers. So that's where I think so many of these operations need to go. And there's a vast amount of information and education that people need to acquire to become experts with these intensive horticulture crops. The learning curve is steep, and you cannot afford to get behind in knowing about this.
It really is. The management intensity really increases in all this intensive production. Management intensity, a lot more labor involved. There's additional capital expenses sometimes in many cases, with greenhouses especially, or planting some of the other crops that might have a long time before there's any return on that crop.
Today in Virginia, we have a lot of farmers, I don't know how many, but we have farmers that we call limited resource farmers who are possibly in rural counties who really are not wealthy people. And many of these farmers are losing their land, having some trouble staying competitive. And what we at Virginia State University like to do is go an extra mile to find that person before they lose their land and go into some kind of bankruptcy or whatever and have to sell out, and work with them, particularly in financial management. Help them get into record keeping, maybe visit their creditors and talk to them about a plan for them to increase their profitability. There's a certain level of individual attention that we have to give to the people who are having this kind of financial trouble. But we offer that service to people who really need to change their farming around, improve their financial management, pick up some of these profitable new enterprises, and become viable farm businesses once again. That's our small farm outreach program that we offer throughout particularly the south side and the southeast part of Virginia.
A couple areas in protected culture that we work here and work with farmers on is greenhouse production. Heated greenhouse production, it's a lot of capital expense, a lot of expensive structures and infrastructure to put up. Can cost $10, $12, $15 a square foot to put up a typical greenhouse. With greenhouses like this, you really can grow crops year-round because you're trying to optimize the growing conditions. Crops like tomatoes, which is probably the largest vegetable crop produced in greenhouses in the U.S., in North America for that matter, can on a 30 by 96 typical mom and pop greenhouse can have $30,000 in gross sales, just tomatoes. But a lot of the farmers that we work with here don't want to put the expense into that kind of structure. So we started working with them with what we call high tunnel structures. They're unheated greenhouses that might be more like $2 or $3 a square foot. These structures are limited in what you can do with them. They're used mainly for season extension to kind of bump the growing season, whereas a farmer might put a tomato crop in there in middle of March in this area, about a full month earlier than would normally put a tomato crop in the ground, and hopefully harvest about a month, 3 weeks to a month earlier, and have a competitive advantage because of that, and maybe get a premium price on their tomatoes. So a farmer with just one tomato crop can pay for that structure. So we see a definite advantage in that sort of thing. And these structures are not just for tomatoes, they're for a lot of high value crops. The brambles crops, of course tomatoes, things like lettuce through the winter time to have some production of something. Vine crops, specialty melons that can have value. So we try to work in these areas, and we see potential, especially for these unheated high tunnel greenhouses.
Well, the greatest benefit that I see, there's a concept that we're working with in Virginia today, is called community-based food systems, is just this chance for consumers to have a personal relationship with their farmers who grow in the food that they're going to eat and serve to their families. that alone, the social benefits of that are great. The quality of the food is much better. The price should be competitive because there's so much less transportation cost with high petroleum prices. But the greatest benefit would simply be stronger communities, and that affects the entire community. It's not just the relationship between the consumer and the farmer, but all the service industries, the agriculture supply companies, even the local service stations, and the plumbers and electricians, and the entire service industries in these cities are all benefit from locally grown agriculture, just because the entire community is strengthened at once. What another big plus for this, in my opinion, is young people, if children could get a better idea of where their food comes from and get a closer connection with the farming community, I think they could have greater pride in their community and also be more interested at an earlier age in their own nutrition. This obesity in young kids is getting to be a bad problem, and a lot of it's due to just a poor diet. They need to understand what healthy food is and what the unhealthy kind of junk food is really doing to them.
Now, we've seen from talking to Stephanie how they're trying to set up a food conference, a food producers conference. So all the vendors and bakers and jelly makers and farms that are making pesto and packaging salsas, they can find out what it takes to be a legal entity in the state of Virginia, find out how to get their facility inspected, how to meet the regulations, and not be so intimidated. And we've also talked with some of the inspectors and found that they really want to be on the side of the growers. They're not there to regulate or shut down or prevent. They want to help you find the best management practices and best food safety practices. Next week, we'll look deeper into those relationships. The relationship between a vendor, a producer, a consumer, the regulators, the city government, the state government. Let's find out what special relationships are also necessary between government officials, the Department of Agriculture, maybe city officials, maybe local officials, maybe inspectors, food safety inspectors, or health department. Let's find more about those relationships that are built between the government and the producers and the consumers. For more information about Meet the Farmer TV, visit our website, meetthefarmer.com.
Meet the Farmer TV has been made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Makia Video Productions, and Frank Melly Productions, with additional support from Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture.